So welcome to this session and thank you for joining us today. We are going to discuss theosophy and it's going to be through a presentation which Gomti has helped me to put together very nicely. Thanks Gomti for this and really nice of you to help me this way. Okay, so before we start, have you guys ever heard of, okay, one second, sorry, just a minute. Look at me. Can you see the screen?
Okay.
Yeah. So, I would request you all to mute yourselves and speak only when you would like to, unmute when you would like to speak. Okay. So ours is going to be an interactive session. All of you are welcome to answer the questions that I'll be putting. I don't know who is. Who's the person who's having that noise coming in?
Mr. Sundarajan,
Sundarajan, yes. Sir, can you please mute yourself? Okay, I'll mute him. All right. So basically, I'd like to start with, have you ever guys heard of this word theosophy? Or is it the first time? Or what have you heard about it? Can you guys share? Please unmute and share. Yes? Anyone?
Have heard about Annie Besant movement about it, and then about Jiddu Krishnamurti and having found him from somewhere in Andhra Pradesh, wanting him to be the spiritual leader of it, like a messiah sort of it.
Yes.
Which he really later, he did not want to be the messiah. He just said, I'm not the messiah or anything.
Yes.
So I've heard about it for a long time. I have gone to Theosophic Society when I was a very small kid, maybe 8-9 years old. After that, I tried to go all the time. It's locked. I remember going to the place, looking at that banyan tree. That was the attraction at those times.
Okay.
And other than that, I have the most interaction from you. The two videos you have sent, they have their insight. And it's still a very difficult topic to understand. Though I'm interested, very difficult to get assimilated.
So today, actually, let's hope that I will be able to tell you a few small, simple things from which you can begin the process. Because if something is too complicated to understand, naturally, nobody will even delve into it. It is not that complicated. Yes, the books are difficult. Anybody else would like to share before I go further?
You know, where am I muted? Yeah. Yeah. My daughter studied in Rishi Valley.
Ah, nice.
So that is the connection I have, you know.
Who's this?
Krishnamurti, actually.
If you guys put on your screen, I will be able to know who's speaking. Is that Richa?
No, I'm Nalini speaking.
Nalini, yes, please put on your, please, thanks. So, yes, Nalini, that's very interesting. So, did you have any sort of, did you anytime hear something more about theosophy or read something?
I used to long ago when when my elder daughter was going to join and all that. And I met a lot of people, you know, at that point. And well, I thought the school was very good.
Okay.
And, you know, and I'm really happy that the younger one also went there finally, you know, went there. So I'm really very happy, you know, that they went to such a wonderful school, you know, and with the environment, everything, and the whole philosophy that is supporting it, you know.
All right.
So, but I don't think I know too much. That's why I would like to know more.
Okay. Okay. So let's start. So basically, theosophy comes from the word theos and Sophia. Theos means divine and Sophia means wisdom. So divine wisdom, and it's also very old and very new. Theosophy doesn't refer to a new philosophy. Of course, Jiddu Krishnamurti's, you know, these are all like different interpretations of the same old philosophy, but Jiddu Krishnamurti is relatively new. But what he's saying is also similar to what the ancients have said. So let's look at how it can be said as new. It's new because it can be applied to a curiosity about our own identity. and the meaning of everything in the world around us. It does that not with a list of simple pat answers, but by giving us a new way to look at ourselves and the universe, a way that provides a basis for developing our own answers. See, the idea of today's program is that the questions which will be coming in your mind about life, those mysteries of life, in some way, Theosophy gives you a direction on how to think about those, those questions, which are mysteries for all of us. Theosophy is also very old because it embodies principles which have been known and taught by the sages of the past all over the world. It has been called by many names. In India, it's called Brahma Vidya, the wisdom of ultimate reality, or Sanatana Dharma, the eternal teaching. In Judaism, it's called Kabbalah, that which has been received. In China, it's called Tao Sue, the teaching of the way. In Islam, it's called Sufism, the way of those who wear wool, the pure or the wise. In Christianity, it's called Prisca Theologia, the ancient thought through divine matters. So this is not the first time that all this has been said. Just a new name for the same thing. It's like old wine in new bottles. Now we come to the first question, which I would ask all of you to give me some answer, anything that comes to your mind. What is your perception of God? One by one, anybody? Anybody can start. Yes, Nalini.
Well, I am Hindu, by whatever religion I have. And somehow I feel God is just a spirit, really, who doesn't really have a form or anything,
yes.
But embodies everything, every religion, everything, and yes. So it is for me a friendly thing to have and to know. So I have that kind of comfortable way of thinking about God.
So you think there is some entity that exists?
Yes. Yes.
And do you relate to him as is there a form that you give to him or
no,
her?
No, I think the thing is I can use all the forms I already have in my own religion.
Okay.
For
so
that, which I do.
Is that? Okay.
Yeah. So it is it sort of reinforces, with this, with this thinking.
Okay, you superimpose your belief with a form which, but anyway, you still feel it's formless in some way. So I think that you're quite close to Theosophy in that already. Mr. Soundarajan, would you like to comment? I am muting you because of the noise coming from you. So when you would like to speak, you please unmute yourself. Would you like to say something, sir?
No.
Okay, sir. Okay. So anybody else would like to, what's your perception of God? Kaun hai God? Bhagwan kaun hai? Bhagwan hai ki nahi hai?
It's energy. I think I really feel it is energy.
It is a vibration. Huh. Okay. What about Meher?
I think I believe I believe it is universal. It's omnipresent within me, and I seek God within. So there is everything and everywhere is just Him.
Okay. I think the reason why you people are attracted to even today's talk is because something in you makes you think that this is the answer. And actually, this is what Theosophy also says, that it is not a form, it's not Shiva or it is not Vishnu sitting on this thing, but there is an energy. Now, what is that energy or what is that? They define it like this. There is one underlying, unconditioned, indivisible truth, variably called the absolute, the unknown root, the one reality, etc. It is causeless and timeless, therefore unknowable and non-describable. It is beingness rather than being. However, transient states of matter and consciousness are manifested in it. in an unfolding gradation from the subtlest to the densest, the final of which is the physical plane. According to this view, manifest existence is a change of condition and therefore neither the result of creation nor a random event. Now, this is a definition that I have given. It's okay. Definitions can be technical, and one has to probe further to understand a definition. I didn't want to water down theosophy too much, but I didn't want to also make it too complicated for you to run away in the opposite direction. So the thing is, it's a very simple thing. It's what you all have already said, that it is an energy. It's not a form. It's not having a human or any form of that sort. It's causeless and timeless. Now, there's one new thing here. It's beingness rather than being. Beingness means it is the quality of being, beingness, the quality of quality. Whatever is quality, anything, the possibility, you can say the potential of everything. The potential of everything is that God. And that is there in all of us. We'll just go ahead to the next question, in which we'll study further what happens. Okay, so this is a simple one. What is the purpose of life? Why are we born? I'm sure all of us have some answer.
I don't know.
Okay, that's honest. Nalini, anybody else?
I don't really think this purpose of life is very important. What is important is, as we go along, what we see and what we learn from that. And we are changing, but we learn a lot of good things. I think that is the purpose of life, to be able to do that, yes. Because I in my work time, when I was doing my, when I was working, I actually worked on this Vraj Bhumi, which is where Krishna, the Lord Krishna, was born. And he spent his his youth, which is along the river Yamuna.
Okay. Now, is it Mathura or?
No, Vrindavan is a large area. Vraj is a large area because Krishna used a lot of space and he moved around. So it's a whole, it's a whole world of Krishna. And I know it is so fantastic. It's so fantastic. It's religious. That is the thing. It is very holy. It is very religious. And so you need to understand, get into the depth of it to understand what it is. That sort of keeps me going, So I'm not bothered about what is my purpose in life. But certainly I learned a lot through this experience of Vraj, which is not really prevalent in, Orthodox Hinduism.
Anybody else would like to comment? Is there any purpose in life?
The way I look into it, and I believe it is to reach him, is to reach him, God himself, to discover him within ourselves.
Okay.
That is what I look at it as. And that is the purpose.
Yeah. And how do we reach him? What is the method? Do you have some idea? Just a few lines.
Yeah, I practice meditation, heartfulness meditation, and we experience him in every meditation of the quietness, of the silence, of the expanse, of the depth. Yeah.
Nice. Anybody else would like to suggest? I think these are two ways. One, which Nalini said, is that I don't really need to define a purpose. We have to keep learning, and we're learning and going on this track. And there is something which moments when we have deep experiences, like what she said in Vraj Bhumi. And the other is, of course, Meher, which is where with concentration working towards looking for that, experience of knowing that God in meditation. So that is another mode of life. Let's look at what Theosophy says could be the reason why we are here and why are we really born. The fundamental identity of all souls with the universal oversoul and the obligatory pilgrimage of every soul, a spark of the former, through the cycle of reincarnation in accordance with cyclic and karmic law during the whole term. The individual souls are as units of consciousness that are intrinsic part of a universal oversoul, just as different sparks are part of a fire. These individual souls undergo a process of evolution where consciousness unfolds and matter develops. Basically, this is what Nalini is saying. And Meher is also saying the same thing, but hers is a more a sort of directed way at looking at it. But the entire aim is ultimately the pilgrimage. The pilgrimage is a pilgrimage is going to meet a divine thing. So all our lives are a pilgrimage, but not just this one life, but the many lives we will have, which is all the reason why we are. It's not, there is a purpose for our life. Whether we look at it as this is the purpose or whatever is the purpose, but the deep purpose of all our life is the same. Externally, we'll have different purposes. Comes to the next question. What is death? Who's going to answer me that? Can you define what is death? Is death the complete ending of life?
I think when you stop growing, it is death.
When you stop growing, it is death. That's a nice perspective. Anybody else?
For me, it is like taking the next train to reach the destination.
Taking the next train. Next train.
So yeah, so this is one incarnation which I have. Yeah, if I don't get him in this, I take another incarnation to reach him. So the journey is on. So
okay. So you are going from this station to the next station in another this thing. If you don't reach the divine in this station, that's your plan. It makes sense, and I think this is exactly what Theosophy would also say. But it defines it a little further. The absolute universality of that law of periodicity, of flux and reflux, ebb and flow, life and death. Everything happens in cycles. Death is a part of the cycle of life. But the immortal spark will continue to take many future births until someday, eons in the future, it will realize itself as the God himself and thus end his journey. Okay. So what I would now like to ask you is, how often do you think of these types of questions? Is there a God? What is the purpose of life? What happens after death? How often do you all ponder about such questions, those deep questions of life?
Very often, very often.
Very often.
I'm stuck on question number 2.
Question number 2, okay.
Yeah.
How about others? I see somebody called Guga. Who's that? And would you like to participate? Yes, anybody else anyway? All right. Basically, the thing is that on a daily basis, we don't think of these questions, because when everything is going well in our life, we have all our goals and we have our daily lives, and these type of questions are very small part of our life. But when unexpected things happen, a major calamity hits us, especially now, like when you're caregiving to somebody whom you never thought you'd ever have to be in a caregiving role, these type of questions can come frequently, especially when there is some amount of suffering involved. Suffering or pain actually gives us a reason, and that is why suffering in a way is good, because it makes us think, and then we are a little more careful about not having future pain. So anyway, this is the thing. Most of our unhappiness comes to us from outside. Unwanted circumstances, failures, negative people. Rarely do we accept ownership of our unhappiness due to our own doing. This is because we do a lot of things and don't realize that there are consequences to each thing we do. In fact, we live without knowing there are some laws of living. That is like trying to row a boat without knowing the rules of rowing. One basic rule of rowing is we push the water forward with our oars to move in the opposite direction. If we don't know this rule and how to use the oars, how are we going to progress? Similarly, there are some basic laws of living. If we don't follow them, we can never progress. We will be rowing the boat and still moving in the same spot in circles. Now comes to the next question. What kind of laws of nature do you think I'm talking about? What are the kinds of laws of nature? We know the laws of our country. We know the laws the legal system we know, but we don't know what are the laws that nature itself has made. What do you think the answer could be? Do you even think there could be some laws in nature? This is theosophy now.
Theosophy everyone is mortal. Everyone is mortal, and change is inevitable. I agree with all everyone has had. I have all those answers of all those perceptions myself. I agree with Richa. I agree with Meher. I agree with Nalini. I have the same, like Brajbhumi, where she had, I have the same feeling when I went to Tiruvannamalai, this thing. I have experienced that. Okay. I don't do meditate. I have my own way of reaching to God, probably tying flowers, because I believe in the bhaktis of different forms, whichever way you choose. It need not be meditation. Absolutely. It need not be listening to rituals. So whatever it is, it's in all the 9 forms of bhaktis, whichever suits you. Probably doing anything, even doing a menial thing for God. It's whatever gives you happiness. Yes. Like whatever you think, if you don't do it, you're lost. You want to do it more.
Yes.
And nature is everyone.
No, but, the question is now, what do you think there are some laws? Laws means if you go against the law, you'll be punished. That is the meaning of a law.
Yeah. Our religion teaches just that. When you follow the dharma, we have the dharma, we have the rules. If you follow, any religion as such says, you have to follow certain rules. If you don't follow them, you will be going to this.
So whether you're going to go through hell or not. You say following your dharma. You'd say. Dharma means what to you? What is dharma?
It is a rule again. It is called dharma, is something which you have to be righteous. So following those rules, if you don't follow those rules, you're going to go to hell or whatever, the Patal Lok or whatever, Yama Lok or whatever. See, these are all ways of conditioning you to behave well, to do your righteous things. Whether that is not that. The idea behind is to make you a better person. Whether all that is there or not, you have to, the thing is you have to follow what is right and what is wrong.
Yes. So now there are different, this is, this is one way of looking at it. Now there's a little more, let's define these things. So let's be a little more specific in this. That what you said is there is some dharma that we have to follow, that if we don't do those things, we will suffer. Now, instead of saying that, one could say something like this. One such law is the law of karma, the law of cause and effect. The way the universe brings all disturbances to harmony. Whatever we send out into the world must ultimately return to us, not because an action must have punishment or reward, but because the world and each of us in it is a continuum in which every action has its complementary reaction. We sow as we reap. On a moment-to-moment basis, we create a karma through our actions, speech, and our thoughts. See, instead of being a little vague, these things are right, but then we're trying now to define it a little more. So we really try to create a proper system of action by which we don't make mistakes that will cause us pain. We may think like, my grandmother, for example, as part of her dharma, she would not allow her maid who was of another caste inside the kitchen. Now she says she's following dharma, but that is not a true dharma in a way, because she has not realized one important thing, which is that we are all humans and all equal. There is no difference in one person born of another caste and one of lower caste and higher caste. Such differences are man-made, not made by nature. So that is why it becomes a little more important to understand what is this karma, which is we know what is karma, all of us know this. Let's look at the karma of thoughts. For example, the positive thoughts. In theosophy, they say every thought is an energy we give out. So they are like energy patterns which are being formed at, say, some subatomic or some other kind of material, where they are being formed like this different kinds of forms. Like you see love, which is some floral form, generosity in pink, charity also, these beautiful colors. So we have the choice to create positive or negative thoughts. These thoughts, when seen clairvoyantly, have colors and shapes. Let's look at negative emotional thought forms. Imagine creating negative thought forms around you all the time. Can you or your near and dear ones stay healthy and well in such a negative thought atmosphere? After this, do we not have ourselves to blame for our own karma? So karma is a sort of a force that we ourselves are creating with everything, with our talk, with our thoughts, with our speech. So this is something, that's why it's coming back to us. Now, it's sometimes a very cruel thing to tell somebody, oh, this is your karma. This is, something one should never actually say. But the thing is, we are studying now. We are trying to learn what is the system that the divine has set out. What is the plan that the divine has? And part of that plan is karma. That every action, you are free. I am free. You are free. All are free. Do whatever you want. But there is a law. Whatever you do, good will come back. Bad will come back. It will come back because ultimately the universe wants harmony. Everything should be same, harmonious. So let us create a karma of good thoughts, which will help people around us and ourselves too. So that's the first law which Theosophy talks about. And once you start thinking about this very clearly, then there'll be a change in your own way of living. Can you think of some things in your life or experience that could be explained only by karma? I'd like to share in my own the answer to this. I believe that my having a special needs child is definitely something karmic, because there is some link. This child is linked to me from previous births. Either I have done it some harm, or it has come to teach me to become a better person. So there is a karmic link. And is there some things like that that you guys can share?
I would like to ask you something. When you say karmic, yes, I believe in karma, and the dharma and karma are equally, probably I was not very articulate. I would like to ask you a question. I lost my father when I was 4. I have not done, probably by the age of 4, it was not something which is of what I've done in this birth that I've got that. So I know it's something unexplainable. And why do you think? Probably I want an answer for that from you. I know it's again, you're going to say it's from your past karma.
No. It's the karma of your father also. In a way, it's a father's karma also, that he had only such a short time to live. So, yes, I mean, everything is karma, because everything that's happened to our lives is karma. But the way it could be a positive karma also, because in a way, it makes, challenges make you a better person, deeper person. Today, Amrita, you are a person who is like a rock standing here in the caregiving community. Anybody comes, you are the first to reach out to them.
Yeah, definitely.
I made you a strong person.
It made me, I might be inside weak and very vulnerable, very, very, what you can say. I cannot put it in words. I'm very bad with that. I'm sensitive. I'm sensitive to pain and all those things, but I can understand. I can empathize. The reason for that is I can empathize with the pain each one is going through.
Because as a child, you have experienced loss as a child. So in a way, your childhood has been affected. And
yes.
Very early, you must have had to become more mature, start caring for other people.
Yes, I had been taught to be a better person, because a regular child is different. You're a fatherless child. You have to be much more better. And the way I have to behave and everything, that had made me more disciplined, how I behave and everything. That has been part of it. I think in a way it's a loss probably at that point of moment. But I have become a better person. All these thoughts are all because of that. Whatever, when I agree with Meher, and I agree with all these things, right from childhood, I had these thoughts. Why did all this happen? Why does it all this have to go through? I was interested in all these metaphysical thoughts, probably I didn't have the time to go through and do all those search for them by myself. But I had those thoughts. Probably that was one of the reasons. When you lose something, you gain something too.
Yes. See, also that karma is the only thing which explains why somebody is born poor and somebody is rich. Somebody is well, somebody is unwell. Somebody is born with defects and another person is born with complete health. Why? Why are there so much differences between one human being and another? All 7.5 billion of us, each one is so different. Think about the people who are born in all those terrorist-ridden countries. You feel sorry. You feel so bad for all those. Look at the children in Afghanistan, the way they are suffering without schools, girl children. Look at their lives. So definitely karma explains the reason why there is imbalance. And we hope that there'll be balance. Anybody else would like to share?
I don't really understand karma as you say it. I don't think I have, I don't think so strongly about it. Because if you say somebody, I can find reasons why I can find out a logical, rational way of understanding why something is happening which is not good. That is, it just needs to be wanting to be more curious, wanting to find out, and it is possible to find out. And I will really, this thing about karma and is something which is difficult for me to understand or take, And also when you said that there is nature has laws, even that I find, I'm not in that either.
Okay, wait. Yeah. We'll come to your thing at the end of this.
Okay.
Because let's see what I have further to say. Okay. So karma of actions and speech are pretty obvious to us, but what is not clear is how we seem to face problems which we don't seem to deserve. That is because we don't understand another law. What could that other law be? Well, okay, we're going to not look at Nalini saying that, how can you say there are laws? First, prove to me that there are laws. No, I will not. I think there are some laws. Because of that only we suffer. Otherwise, none of us should suffer. We should all be just happy. Why are we not able to be completely happy? Kuch to reason hai na for our unhappiness. So what could be the other law which helps karma in some way? Anybody else? Quickly, this is easy actually. Not complicated.
Probably if you realize what is what's wrong and do something about it, being more aware of things and not worry too much, accepting things as they are and leave everything to God, but just do your duty, whatever is right. That doesn't mean when you put everything on God and that you can just sit in one corner. You have to do your duty, leave it rest to the God.
No, but the question is why are some things happening only to me? That kind of a question comes.
What could be the other law? Is that law is the question I tried to answer was what could be the other law? Other law is accepting. I cannot say it is a law or anything. Probably my way of thinking is, okay, these things are happening. What can we do about it? We can't do anything about it. We have to accept them. So that is my opinion and how I
that is acceptance in a way of karma. Okay, that could actually be a continuation of the acceptance of karma. What I'm asking right now is some things like Nalini says that if there's something going wrong, I think about it. This is the reason it's going wrong, and that is it. For me, that is it. Okay. But there are things which happen to a person who's just born with a birth defect. It's a skin condition. What explains that? That is the third. It's happening. I mean, it's not my imagination. It's there in front of us. Meher was born in a family where she was taught to meditate as a child. I was born in a family where my father and his brothers were alcoholic. Why? Why was I not born in a family like Meher? So I had that personality. Like Meher, I had to work hard to become even 1/100th of Meher. Why so much difference? So the difference is the law of the necessity of reincarnation. Reincarnation is a necessity. It is the necessity because just one life is not enough to balance all our good and bad karma that we create. We think of ourselves as one unit. Instead of thinking of ourselves as our life as one garment worn by the soul to be discarded at death and taken on a new garment as another person, but in the same soul. Hence, whatever karmic energy, good or bad, we will keep taking births until we balance all of it. We have many, many births, many, many lives, and each birth is just a dress. I am wearing a dress as Vimal. Nalini is wearing a dress as Nalini. I know her as Nalini. She knows me as Vimal. But she doesn't know who is the real me. I don't know who the real Nalini is. So that is how we are living. That is a law of reincarnation. Reincarnation is also a law. In a way, it is actually, the thing is, it's a kind of a cycle. We keep getting, now we'll come to that. Yet knowing we have led other lives and knowing we must lead more in the future, how best do we deal with our karma in our present? Now we come to what Amrita said, completely correct. In order not to create new bad karma, the best way is to cheerfully face our karma and work positively with energy and goodwill. That's the only logical way. Anything going wrong, face it, and that's logical. But here we're looking at something which moves in cycle. Reincarnation means reincarnation. Karn means flesh. So coming back to birth in flesh. So that is reincarnation. That's a cycle. Can you think of other things that move in cycles? It's all there around us. We get up in the morning, there is a cycle.
It's a day and night, seasons, and then our joys and sorrows. You are all not all in the same time. They're all cycles. And even prosperity, adverseness, drought, everything. Our rains, our droughts.
Yes. So while one can intellectually grasp, absolutely, Amrita. Sorry, I'm cutting you. Let's try and give more time in the end. That's why I would like to this thing, so we can continue our conversation in the end. While one can intellectually grasp karma and reincarnation, the absence of an all-loving, compassionate God makes one feel kind of lost and lonely. Faith in God gives us comfort. Now, remember the beginning we said that there isn't a God of the sort that you think. It's not a God that comes and says, oh, everything will be all right. I will solve your problem. Pray to me and things will be all right. That is the kind of God which gives us comfort. But that's not what Theosophy says. Theosophy says whatever's going to happen is your karma. You have to face it. But that's not the only thing. One doesn't need to feel that hopeless. One need never feel alone. If one understands Theosophy, the journey of our soul, one will realize that there are many enlightened intelligences out there in human or superhuman form who guide and help us in dealing with life, in facing it, and we are never alone. These higher beings are not gods, but as close to that as can be. And their sole aim is our evolution. They will never abandon even one person, while all we must do is live by the laws and keep going. Now, this is another thing that Theosophy talks about, which again, one has to go more deeper into understanding who are these superhuman beings. Jesus was one, Buddha was one, all the leaders of all religions, whether Zoroastrianism or Muhammad, all of them at some point had conquered all their selfishness and all the ugliness of what normal human beings are to do something for humanity. So all of them had that, and they continue to guide. That is a thing which Theosophy talks about. We'll look at it further later. So in conclusion, Theosophy is not very different from the religions of the world, nor are its moral teachings. Same thing, be honest, everything, whatever all religions talk about, same thing, only Theosophy is also saying. But the major difference is it puts the entire responsibility of our lives on us. We can see the logical necessity of karma and reincarnation for human life. If we see the logical necessity of karma and reincarnation for human life, we will live very differently. If we think about a position on earth, in the solar system, in the galaxy, we are totally insignificant. There are galaxies in millions. The Milky Way, in which we are just a spot. Our solar system, in which we are just a spot. We could easily lose our eye on evolution to enjoy our life to the last drop, because we can think our life has no significance, so why not enjoy as much as possible? But and we have never-ending wants, and we keep wanting more things, thinking that will give us enjoyment and that will give, but we realize that everything is temporary. Unless we are drawn back to understanding the true meaning and use of our lives, our moral and spiritual evolution, to finally realize the divine in us, it's easy to lose sight of our actual purpose in life. No harm in enjoying materialism, but we must not lose sight of the true aim of our soul. So the three main ideas to grasp are: the human soul is immortal, and its future is the future of a thing whose growth and splendor has no limit. The principle that gives us life, dwells in us, around us, is undying and eternally beneficent, is not seen or heard or smelt, but is perceived by the one who desires perception. We are each our own absolute lawgiver, the dispenser of glory or gloom to ourselves, the decreer of our life, our reward, our punishment. So these are the three main things to understand, that we have a soul and that goes on living. There is something in us which gives us life, but if we want, we can try and perceive that. And then we are the ones who are the cause of everything in our lives. Now we come to another concept, which I will go quickly through, which is our sevenfold body. According to Theosophy, we have 7 bodies. One is the physical body. Then we have an astral body, which is an exact duplicate of the physical body. Then we have the prana, which is a life force. Then the desire body. Our desires are not inside our heart. It's not inside our mind. It's a body by itself. And then there is manas, or our mind, which is another body. And then we come to buddhi and atma, which is the spiritual part of us. So now what Theosophy says is atma, buddhi, manas, these 3 is the permanent self. It's the one which goes from one birth to another. Okay. And this lower part, which is called the lower quaternary in Theosophy, the kama, prana, linga, and sthula, this is the temporary part of us. So that is the temporary part. The other 3 are the permanent part. And each birth, like a little essence, is taken and goes to that higher mind. Now, just as a parallel, in the Vedantic philosophy, the same thing is also said with a slight difference. You have the Annamaya Kosha, which is the physical body, the Pranamaya Kosha, which is the energy body, or the pranic body. The Manomaya Kosha is actually our mind and our emotions together. They call it, because even in Theosophy, say it's Kama Manasic body. It's our mind and emotions are sort of become one body. So in Hindu philosophy, they have made it one body, whereas in Theosophy, they have divided those 2 bodies. So Manomaya Kosha, that is our emotional and mental body. Vijnanamaya Kosha, which is our wisdom body, and Anandamaya Kosha, which is our buddhic body, which is our atmic body. So this is Vedanta, but this type of thing is there in many other philosophies also. So here, I mean, a little more description of what the physical body is. Now, the reason why we sort of don't want to look at all these things, because we don't have any proof of this. How do you know? The pranic people who are doing pranic healing, acupressure who's doing acupressure healing, will say etheric body, I know. How do I know that my emotional body is something other than my physical body? There's no proof. But that's where, you know, we need to think a little further about all this. I'll just come to that part little later. Let's go to something which will be more useful for you. Thus, as caregivers, we need to understand that as only the physical brain of our patient is deteriorating, which is like a receptor for our mind. Hence, the mind understands all that we are doing, only cannot communicate back to us as the receptor is broken. Now, this is the thing that you all can understand and look at, which is that the brain cells have deteriorated in Alzheimer's. Okay, it's not the mental body. The mental body is outside the brain cells. The brain is just a receptor for us to know. Whereas the mind is out there. So the soul or permanent self is completely aware of us. That person's soul whom you are giving caregiving for is completely aware of us. Even if this person is half semi-conscious, that other being is completely aware and knows our hard work as caregivers. In a way, we are helping our patient balance his or her karma through this disease. We are helping them in another way also, not only physically, but also to balance some karma which these people have got, which is why they are getting this kind of an end in their lives. We also are developing our higher qualities like patience and compassion in the process of caregiving. So these kinds of, this idea that we have a sevenfold body, the fact that our brain is just a receptor and our mind is not in our brain, and which is something you all can experience in different ways. When you sleep, when you go, you are actually out of your body when you sleep. So there are many experiences. There is a lot of videos on near-death experience. You can look at all that. But the thing to understand, the way I look at philosophy is, how does it help my daily living? How do I benefit? I will benefit if I realize that my patient has only their brain is affected. Their whole self is not affected. So if I realize that otherwise one gets to feel, whatever I'm doing, what is really the point? I'm trying to make the person as comfortable as possible, but that person doesn't even know. So that is the thing. Just like only a few centuries ago, now why would you want to even, give any of this even any thought? Why do we want to, when Theosophy is saying there are 7 bodies and there is other births, and there is a higher self which takes other births, and this is just a temporary part. All of these things, there doesn't seem any proof. I don't know. It could be just one philosophical system trying to impose its views and change my thinking. Why? Like what Nalini asked. Absolutely. I mean, that is the way most of us who are scientific minded would think. Just like a few centuries ago, it was common to think that the sun revolved around the earth. The earth was the center, the sun was revolving around. It is common for us today to be veiled of our own nature. We can be completely ignorant of our own nature, because there is no proof for it. Before there were telescopes, we thought that we are the solar system and the stars are just us. Then we realized we are part of just one galaxy. The Hubble telescope tells us that there are millions of galaxies only. So unless, there is proof, we will, just a minute, we will not accept all these things. But the thing is, if we try to think of the analogy of the fact that we didn't even know that the sun was not revolving around us, but we were revolving around the sun. It's a simple thing like that. It's the same thing. We see only our lower selves, like you can see here. We don't even know we have a permanent higher self. We don't even know that. Okay. And nor do we know that we have had many such lower self births, because there is a veil of ignorance. We just don't know. We can't cross this veil. We don't know. When we die, for a brief time, we may come to know then. But while we are living, we don't know. So we live our lives like this. That's it. And that's my sharing for today. And now we'll open up for discussion. So let's, open it all up. What occurred to you in this whole presentation? We talked about karma, reincarnation, the 7-fold human body. These are some of the basics of Theosophy. Did I go too fast or, yeah?
Yeah, it is like touching the tip of the iceberg, and now I'm like, there's so much to know. I'm sure, Vimal, you have told it in a nutshell, but there is such deep, knowledge that one has to just sit, contemplate and just reflect on it, right?
Yes. Let us just think of a few objections. Nalini, I would like you to now talk about the objections that you have. You're muted, Nalini.
You know, let me say about the reincarnation. For me, I don't think so much as you have thought about it and interpreted it and told us, because it is part of my religion. So I believe in it. I don't really want to dwell on it. It's acceptance, you know, total acceptance. And so, you know, the other one, when you say, where, you know, that, you know, why has this happened to me? Why am I suffering? I think there are reasons within this world that will say, you know, and the problem is that we have a lot of bad, you know, negativeness around that makes people suffer. So I'd rather be thinking about it in a positively and see how to solve it. That will be more important for me to do, you know, because I think most of the things are, you know, can be solved, you know, and really a lot of these things that are happening today, I mean, which is happening. And even the person who is going through it has to also come to terms with it. You know, I think it's very important. And because it's not the end of the world, you know, and only then they will get strength to get over it. So that is why, you know, I think it has to be, you have to learn how to solve.
I think what you're saying is that the practical approach is much better than going so deeply into all those philosophies and trying to know.
Yes.
Okay, that's a sort, I mean, a lot of people are like that. My husband's like that. He's like not interested in all this because I don't need these answers. I am quite happy. So what you are saying. But some of us seem to be of a different make altogether. Like I said, Amrita, I think, Meher, I think, Richa seems to be interested. So some of us are, you know, these kind of questions come.
Okay. Yeah, that way I think I just accept, as I don't even think about it. A lot of things which other people think about, because I don't think, I don't want to waste my time, you know.
Yeah.
There's so much around.
Exactly my husband's word.
So much around to do. That is what, then you talked about something towards the end, is that you think there should be aspirations, human aspirations. That's what you were talking about towards the end. And another thing about evaluation of the capacity, one's own capacity. And I think that's what you mentioned as a one that will help you. It is aspiring. I call it aspiration, that you need to know that you have to do something more. You have to reach some you know, standard higher, you know. For that, I call that aspiration. You have explained it in a different way, you know. So, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah. Each person has their own way. For example, I feel Meher has a thinking that her higher purpose in life is to help people. So that, you know, with her acupressure help and the service she provides. Each person has that aspiration as a definition. For some people, it might be as simple as, I need to give the most empathetic care to the person whom I'm caring for. It may not be a very big aspiration. This itself is a big aspiration. If you say, I have to be kind, I have to be mindful.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, but everybody has to be, and has to try to be also. You know, because the problems are coming because people are not, you know, also. That, you know, I will go along with the way, the Buddhist thinking, maybe. As, you know, as you said, these people, they're really great. Buddha, you know, they're really great human beings. I don't think they're, you know, they're not God, but they are great human beings. Even Jesus Christ. So you learn a lot from these people also. And maybe I tend to be on that way of thinking, you know, which is more to do with one's own self to, you know, sort of discipline, whatever. It's sort of, it is another approach, which is quite different.
It's the same approach. It is the same thing. Only difference is you're not asking some questions. That's all. You're looking at it as a practical way of looking at it. So what can I learn from this person's life? Which helps me.
Yes.
Actually, if you go to the Dhammapada, which is the stories, Buddha, the teachings explained through stories. Beautiful, Buddha's teachings. I will forward one link, which one particular Yutto Dhamma Bhikkhu is a Canadian. So beautifully explained each of the Dhammapada verse. There are some I think 450 verses are there, I think. But very beautifully explained. Very nice. Very practical.
Yeah. I mean, that is I tend to think that is what is important.
It's perfectly fine. And you know, many of us are just theosophists without even knowing that we are theosophists. Actually, that is the truth. Deeply, we believe these other things.
Okay.
Theosophy is just an external sort of a thing, you know.
It is a doctrine, is it? Is what you're saying? It's a kind of doctrine, or
it's a doctrine. I mean, it's one core book is called the Secret Doctrine. See, okay. There was a time in the 19th century where a lot of people are doing spiritualism. What is spiritualism? Is bringing back the dead, talking to the dead. There was a lot of all that going on. A lot of people were having experiences all over the world, in Europe and in England, in America. So that time, that's when, and then there was another drive was towards science. Totally science was science was going at a high thing. So then these people who are behind the society, they felt that life on earth is going to become extremely materialistic on one hand, and some kind of blind supernatural thinking is also happening. So we have to introduce a scientific approach towards life. That's when they gave out this teachings in another form, which is called theosophy, which is actually an ancient thing. But see, the thing they say is, I mean, about these spirits. What are these spirits? There's a lot of study on all that. There are people who see fairies. There are people who are clairvoyant. There are people who are getting visions. What is the reason? What is the logic? Is it all nonsense or is it some sense? So theosophy needs studies in all of these things. For example, there is a photography called Kirlian photography, where they can take images of the pranic body. So people have done that. So they look at these things. See, there are so many things in this world which demand answers. My father knew that he was going to die in the month of August. He told us, for 3 years, he was telling us that he's going to die in August. The 3rd year, nobody believed him. That year, he died in August. How?
So he had a kind of vision of premonition.
My internet was not good. Who was that who died in August? My internet is unstable.
Okay, don't worry. I think you'll be able to see the recording. We're just discussing how all this.
No, I could hear Sophie. But you were telling someone, who was that who told that he's going to die in August and they died?
My father.
Oh, okay.
So how do people, so theosophy goes, see, we were discussing why do we even need to know all this? If Nalini was saying that, anyway, I mean, all I look at it is solve my problems.
And I could hear that, only that, I could hear all that. Only I could hear the name of the person. I can agree the same thing with you. My mother was telling, I'm going to die at 80, I'm going to die at 80. Oh, but she did not die at 80, but I think my mother's properly not alive. Like, her deterioration started on around 80. So that's also something like that. They knew something is going to happen to them at 80. She was telling, I'm going to die at 80. I'm going to die at 80 for the past.
So that is what I'm saying. Theosophy has answers for such questions. For example, if you want to know, there is a channel called the Antakarana between the higher self and the lower self. The higher self actually knows exactly what our life is going to be like. Even before we are born, the baby, before we are born, at that moment we'll get a vision of what this life is going to be like. This is all part of a divine plan. That is what theosophy is. So at the end, and when we are out of it also, we will know exactly why things happened, what was the cause of it, what we did, what were our past births, and what happened in this birth, what was the cause of it, and why this. So this thing, which you're saying, this Antakarna is a conscience kind of channel. It tells you things. It gives you sudden insight. Like you have the scientists coming with a sudden eureka, I found it type of thing.
Amma, and the powder arstingla.
Anybody else would like to share something else which in this session was new or interesting for them?
Vimal, I really like the way you connected, a person with dementia to, how just it is the physical brain which is not working and everything else is intact.
I know.
Very touching, very touching. And I always feel it when I'm with the person with dementia, or children with special needs. The calmness which you see has to be experienced. Because when we are agitated, it is our heart, soul, and mind which is actually agitated with the past, with the future, with what could happen, what can happen, the fears, whatever it is. But with these people, there is no fear, there is no anxiety, there is pure bliss. That is to be something which is, when I really sit with them, and when you say that it is just that physical brain which has a few neurons, which are a few plaques sitting out there, not getting the communication through, and everything else is intact. Thank you so much. That's a huge, beautiful connect.
Yes. Thank you, Meher. You had made me realize once when I was explaining to you about my mom, you asked me to go out of the room, not talk in front of her. Until then, I did not really know that what you were telling was, it does make sense or anything. I did not mind talking right in front of her, but you asked me to move out of the room and tell that. After that, I realized what you're saying is absolutely true. Only that they cannot communicate, but how we interact with them is more important. We have to consider them, they're as natural like us, and they experience everything like us. They live in the present, not in the future or in the past. They are very much at least to my mother, I can say she is in the present. She can understand what is happening to her right now. I agree with Vimal, who could correlate that, and that's what brings to my mind. If Meher could remember it, because I can remember because it's only one interaction. Meher will be interacting with too many people. Maybe she may not remember that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amrita. But Vimal, I think the end was too abrupt, the way you presented. I was waiting for more and you said thank you.
I was looking at the time. I do want to end it in like 1 hour. So because everyone has dinner, other things. And
I thought we were just starting.
Oh. No. See,
that's very nice, Richa.
Detail, we can have more discussions, and you guys should read some things and learn from your own intuition, your own ideas. My saying is not. This is just the beginning.
On that note, can you suggest something, if a person wants to understand it better, can you recommend some books or material?
Yeah, see, one thing is that the Philippine Theosophy Society offers a free course. Online course. So I will send you the link. You can take up an online free course of Theosophy. It'll start you off. They will give you the guidance on books and everything.
Yeah.
And all the books are available online. Free. Most of the books are available online if you want to read.
Vimal, if we have time, we can do that. Probably I'm too much pressed with time. Probably we Gomati, and you can form a group like how we have a buddies group, like something like this Theosophy. People who are interested in it, probably you can have a group. And you were telling to Nalini that you were going to send her the Buddha tales, some Canadian. So probably those kind of smaller things, which we cannot immediately spend more time in reading a book and some things like that. Things in a nutshell, probably. Thought for the day.
We can do that also, but what I would think is the way in Theosophy, the system we have is threefold: study, meditation, service. Service you're all already doing. Some amount of study, even if it is one paragraph only one day, but some study will help you to understand the path of Theosophy.
Meditation is one of my way. I cannot.
You can't do meditation.
I don't know, somehow I cannot do it.
No, meditation also is one part. Even in only 3 minutes you do. But just 3 minutes. Just because this whole thing molds your character. Molds your life.
Thoughtlessness in those 3 minutes is very difficult.
No, because see, whatever we are building our future self also. Please remember that. If you build calmness, rationality, logic, good powers of thinking, all that, future birth also is going to be, you are going to be born with these kinds of nice qualities. So it's not something, it's a saving bank for the future. So don't think, I can't meditate. If you develop ability to meditate, it will help you in future births also.
Okay, I'll try.
Thank you, Vimal. And I will love to read those stories of Buddha, because I think that will really, I love doing that. I know it'll really give me a lot of happiness, to read anything about a great person. I love that, it really inspires you. It lifts you, like that. And certainly that what you said, I'm looking forward to that.
Okay. Thank you, Gomti.
Thank you, Vimal. That was an enlightening session. So that makes me understand even more deeper, in the sense we sometimes see child prodigies, right? Children who are born and they come up with so much of knowledge. How come? Anda Madri. And there are certain children who don't see the light of the day. Now, Vimal, probably Theosophy has an explanation as to why this happens. So it is part of that cycle of birth and rebirth. If we have to think of a newborn child who dies, so what could be the reason? Has that child committed any bad karma? So Theosophy has an explanation now as to why that has happened, right? So we have no control over what happens to us because we are not aware about our previous births, nothing we know about it, but we definitely have control over the response over what happens to us.
What happens?
So, so that was a great learning, Vimal.
When Buddha attained enlightenment, at that moment, his enlightenment came from the fact that he saw all his previous births. He understood why this is happening. This is the cause. This is the reason. That's why the first thing is, there's a cause for suffering. There is suffering, there is a cause for suffering. The cause for suffering is the fact that you're not following all the right ways of living. Absolute path.
Yeah. And we don't understand. We will think, we keep on saying, we keep on saying, no, we see people also chatting and talking about this. We don't understand what were the mistakes that we do, what mistakes we do. So somehow, this Theosophy is a great learning. And I think we need to really, as Amrita said, and even Richa and few of us can form a group and probably take this learning forward so that we are able to understand it better, Vimal.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Vimal.
Let's take it forward. We'll start with simple books. We can start doing little reading. Annie Besant has written simple books. Annie Besant's life is also an inspiring life. Someday we will discuss that life. Beautiful life. Okay. So thank you so much.
So much, Vimal. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.